Welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of sports. And it is time for football season. The NFL is back. Preseason is in full swing. And like we did last year, we are going to cover all 32 teams, going division by division and giving you what we think this team is going to look like for this upcoming season. Tim, are you ready to go?
Let's run it. It's right around the corner. I'm excited.
Football season is always a hype time, and we have a Bears fan and a Packers fan in here, so
Always makes these conversations that much more fun.
it's only fitting that we start with the NFC North, starting
Of
with
course.
Tim, your Chicago Bears, who had a really, really rough season last year. It
Not
wasn't
surprising.
pretty, but they went 3-14, and they were able to use that to get the first overall pick and make some very savvy moves, trading that for the ninth pick to acquire DJ Moore. And they turned that ninth overall pick into right tackle Darnell Wright. So they also had a ton of cap space, which they used to bring in a lot of key free agents, especially on defense, with a pair of linebackers, Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, a pair of edge rushers in Demarcus Walker and Yannick Ngakoue, some help on the lines for Fields, which we'll get to that later, in right guard Nate
Boy, did
Davis.
they need it.
And they stole basically the Packers tight end room by signing both Rob Tunyon and Mercedes Lewis. I mean, everybody just wants to be us, but it's okay. It's fine. What we can expect from the Bears, there's a lot of hype surrounding this team. After going 3-14, and this is year
Welcome to
two,
Bears fans.
this is year two of the Eberflus Getsy regime with Justin Fields as a starting QB. The expectations are higher than they've been in a long time. And it starts with number one at quarterback, because Justin Fields is an obvious spark plug and playmaker with his legs, racking up over 1,100 yards on the ground last season. But there's still a lot left to be desired is with the arm. Now, what we can say
Yeah,
about his arm is he has a cannon for an arm. The arm strength
he
is
has
there.
flashes.
We're not going to deny that he could throw the ball a million yards, but he struggles
Question is how
almost
accurately.
everywhere else in the passing game. The passing numbers as a whole were not pretty. He ranked the bottom in many passing categories. And I
It
think
got to the point where they didn't even trust him to pass the ball.
no,
They were
because
like, we're just gonna try to run and see what happens.
he only threw about like 200 some odd times and got a little bit over 2,000 passing yards,
Well, there was a couple of those games where they only let him throw the ball 10, 12 times.
which I think is
It's crazy.
frightening.
I have not
Whether
seen that. I have not seen that in quite a while with a quarterback that is deemed as your starter.
whether you want to blame that on the weapons available to Justin Fields, the line not exactly protecting for Fields, which I think is
No,
interesting,
that's
by the
that's
way.
been a big issue.
Well, I actually happen to disagree with that, because if the line was
Really?
bad, then they wouldn't have been able to run the ball as effectively as they had, because they ranked towards
Hmm.
the top of the league in a lot of major rushing statistics. David
Yes,
Montgomery was
but
a huge part of that offense. Khalil Herbert was involved in a big way, and Justin
yeah,
Fields running the ball. The combination of all those three made them a very potent rushing attack, which they did a lot. So
so
if they're able,
devil's
if
advocate to that point, run blocking strikingly differently than pass blocking. Second of all, Justin Fields' running really didn't have much to do with his offensive line. It was him scrambling for his life or designed QB runs where the lineman didn't really have to block very much because he would just run around the outside and take off. And also David Montgomery, he was pretty good. He was injured for some of the year. I don't even really think he was that like efficient as a rusher. I don't think. At least he didn't feel that way. I would not necessarily agree with the fact that the line did all that great in the passing game. In the running game, yeah, they were pretty decent, but not a lot of that running I felt like it had to do with the line getting a good push by any means.
and I think there's something to be said for that. Yes, Justin Fields ran around a lot.
Yeah.
However, how much of that is on the offensive line not really blocking for him, or Justin Fields
Some of it's
holding the
play
ball
design. Some of it's
for
play design and the
just a
fact that,
bit too long,
yeah,
because
just
he
holding on to the
he
ball.
did tend to do that, just hold on a bit too long and take some unnecessary sacks, or look to run and scramble very, very often, which, if you remember from 2 years ago when we talked about Justin Fields as a prospect, one of my big indictments on him is when the first read wasn't there, he would take off and scramble, which he has very much continued to do in his first few seasons here in the NFL. And I think that's a
He's been
problem.
relatively efficient with the running, at least, and that's what's kept him from being, a real problem. But I think the bigger problem is the fact that it's not sustainable. Doing that is not
Mm-mm.
sustainable long term, and it's not sustainable for your offense either, because eventually teams are going to figure out what kind of packages in terms of quarterback spies or what zones that they run, to close off whatever running lanes that he gets. It's one of those things that these type of quarterbacks, you'll see some success out of that type of running early on, maybe within the first couple of years. Eventually he'll get figured out. So he has to become less one-dimensional and find out ways to be a better pocket passer if he wants to survive.
Absolutely. But additions like DJ Moore should help him out with that.
I truly
And
believe that it will.
yeah, and I'm sure it will. But when you add these weapons, and it's like, okay, you have Moore, Mooney, Chase Claypool, sign Cole Kmet to a big extension, bring in Robert Tonyan, who is a very capable pass catching tight end. Anybody who's a Packers fan would know that. It's
I
kind
would
of,
even argue that I like the fact with Khalil Herbert at running back is he's more of a, I wouldn't call him a more of a pass catching running back,
he
but
can do it.
he can have much more of an effect in the passing game as a running back than per se, David Montgomery did. Montgomery was more of your traditional pound the ball up the middle running back and try to get whatever yards. I like the fact that with Khalil Herbert, you still have your pound the rock guy with Donta Foreman, and I'm sure that they'll use him for those type of sets. But I like the fact that Herbert at the running back position can provide a little bit more of versatility there than David Montgomery could. So I like the fact that they've added a couple things there on offense. I'd say the one addition there, I really can't say why exactly they signed Mercedes Lewis other than just depth, but I really don't know what that guy's going to bring to an offense at this stage in his career.
Blocking is
Actually,
what
that's
he's
true.
is what
That's
he's
true.
going to bring,
He's
because
a good blocking tight end. I forgot about that.
even at age 40, Mercedes Lewis is still one of the best blocking tight ends
He's
in the
just
league.
dense.
And Mercedes Lewis is a dense boy, but he is probably a better pass blocker than some of the offensive linemen that the Bears have, and I
It is possible.
don't think that's too crazy. But on that line, you get Nate Davis, you get Darnell Wright, and you look at this offense as a whole. Now it's no excuses for especially for Justin Fields,
Yeah,
because they
he's got to take the
complained
step up.
they complained about the protection. They went and addressed the offensive line. They complained about the receivers, went and addressed that too. So the expectation, MVP?
Oh
No.
gosh, no. I
No.
if any Bears fan is thinking that this is a Justin Fields MVP year, they need to wake the heck up
You'd
because
be
there is
surprised how many bets have come into
I
Vegas for
know.
Fields
I
MVP.
know, and that's the problem is that's just Bears fans in general. When you start getting their hopes up, then it goes from here and just skyrockets. So I mean, I'm a firm believer in that you will see some significant improvement in this team because I feel like there is way less holes than you saw last year. I liked the fact that they filled up, some of what they lost in linebacking with TJ Edwards, and Tremaine Edmonds. I think both of those guys can be very. I mean, no one's going to replace Roquan, but you've got two guys
No.
who have played
No.
well and have done it for a bit that can certainly fill those positions and be good, even just mentors for some of the other younger guys that they have on the defensive end. And then you talk about offensive line, adding some of the guys, different receivers, whether it be the tight ends or the actual wide receivers. I'm not saying they have like a star-studded roster, but to me, they're more complete than they were before, which is why I see them winning more games than I would have predicted with whatever roster that they had that last year.
No, of course. And I mean, they're going to make improvements. They're going to be better. This is not a 3-14 roster. I
It
could
shouldn't be.
I can see them. Look, I can see them winning 6, 7 games. Let's not get crazy, Uh, I don't expect like an over 500 improvement like a lot of Bears fans are predicting. I think that's
My,
a
my
little
prediction
bit
is more on their
wild.
my prediction is more on their ceiling than their floor. And for me, is given what I've seen, as much as I like being a realistic Bears fan,
Yeah, because
for
you have them
this
going 9 and
purpose,
8.
I do. I have them going 9-8. Part of it is I don't think they have a very difficult schedule. Versus
Mm,
playoff teams, I have them going 1-6. I have them sneaking a win against a team that I have in the playoffs. But other than that, I don't think they have that difficult of a schedule. And this 9-8, I will absolutely say, can easily turn into 7-10. Easily. But I also don't think
I
that
think
they're
it
going to
can
be like a
too.
5-win team. I don't think they're going to be
Yeah,
a 5-win team.
yeah, and you're saying that because I have them as a 5-win team because
Yes.
let's remember the Bears are the Bears.
Oh,
And when
absolutely. I
and
mean,
when I see,
I'm no stranger to all this.
look, when you have as much organizational incompetence and failure as the Bears have had, what in the world makes you think that that is going to change now? Like, they didn't have some big organizational overhaul. Like, that new regime is building something.
I don't think that regime has had a chance yet with a very decent team. I mean, we all knew that team last year. You could look at that team from a mile away and say that's not a good football team. I didn't
I still
expect that
don't think this
regime.
team is good.
I'm not saying that they're, like magical, but I could see them stealing enough games to be at 9-8. I'm not saying that that's a deserving 9-8 because realistically, some of those games that I have them winning, they probably shouldn't necessarily win if you just look at the state of both teams. But that's the NFL in general. You will
Look,
see teams
and
drop
yeah,
games to worse teams that is just pure random chance.
and see, here's the
But
thing. I think for as many games as they'll steal, they will blunder twice as many because Bears gonna Bears, and the Chicago Bears find a way to lose games that you just throw your hands up and say, how the heck did that happen? The team could be good, the team could be bad, the team could be mediocre. It doesn't
they could
matter. They
have a 14-point lead in the second half. It doesn't matter. They'll do their thing.
they'll be on the
And
verge of
and I and I
advancing to a divisional round
and doink
and
doink.
and doink doink. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter
No, and I completely get
what
that.
like
Obviously, I've witnessed all of this over the,
organizational
the last couple of
ineptitude doesn't
years.
go anywhere. Organizational ineptitude does not leave
Yeah.
in any circumstances. So you and I definitely have our differing opinions as to what the Bears would be. You have them playing closer to their ceiling. I
Realistically,
have them playing closer to my floor, and it makes sense. You're a Bears fan. I'm a Packers fan, so that
yeah.
discrepancy is definitely going to happen. But we have to move on. We have 3 other teams to cover, the next of which being the Detroit Lions, another young team with a lot of hype that actually took that step last year. And,
Yeah.
for as bad as they've been throughout their history, this was the first real major turnaround, major breakthrough, major step forward,
Yeah.
at least that I can remember. They went 9-8 last year and just barely missed out on the playoffs. And
Yeah, they were close.
by stretches, they got better. Now, how much better, like whether that'll translate into more wins, right around the same, falling back down to earth and regression to the mean, I don't know. But looking at this team, they play like their head coach, fast, relentless, and mentally insane in the best way possible, of course.
They're a gritty team.
But being from Detroit, you kind of have to be a little bit insane to suffer through all they've suffered in the sports world. So
Yeah.
they offensively will be behind the strength of their offensive line, which remains one of the better units in football. And that's a real strength. Frank Ragnow, Jonah Jackson, Hala Vaitai, Taylor Decker, and Penei Sewell is one of the best units in football. And that masks a lot of underlying issues that would otherwise be exposed by an average offensive line or a below average offensive line. Namely, Jared Goff played a lot better than we expected last year, and he proved many people, including us, very,
The
very wrong.
goofball stepped up.
Yes, he did. He did not play like a goof, and he will have the opportunity to take this offense to new heights with guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, when Jamison Williams comes back. And the running back room is going to be a new element that
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to
It's
see
gonna
how
look
they're
it's
they're
gonna
going
look
to be.
very different.
Because you signed David Montgomery in free agency. He's going to be your more traditional back, but then you draft Jahmyr Gibbs 12th overall. And that's where things get really interesting because people are making this prediction that he's going to be the next Alvin Kamara with the way he can catch the ball and run the ball
I
and
hate all
be
these
a dual
predictions
threat.
about a prediction of a rookie who, hasn't played a worthwhile. I don't know. I haven't paid attention to what he's done in the preseason, but
Look,
a
man,
real snap in the NFL, in my opinion, where I have a feeling that he has the ability to be good, but we've also seen a lot of guys with a lot of talent in specific, aspects of the game that haven't panned out. Let this guy play. Let him do some stuff before you start calling him like an all pro, comparing him to an all pro running back.
well, given the information that we do know, good or bad, he will be used. You don't
Oh,
draft a running back that high
no, he's not just
and
gonna,
not use him.
sit on the bench. But with the guys, obviously, losing DeAndre Swift, and essentially,
Losing is a loose term. They shipped him off to Philadelphia for
yeah,
nothing. It's like a 7th round pick, like 2 years into the
yeah, it was a
future.
6th or a 7th or something like that. I was surprised by it, but regardless, so they get rid of pretty much their entire running back room in general. I mean, David Montgomery becomes your traditional back. You have a sensible running back tandem in terms of your rushing and your passing. And depending on how they want to run their offense, I could very well see them use Jahmyr Gibbs quite a bit in the passing game. Now, that may not happen, but now all of a sudden they've got guys to, spread the ball around a little bit. I'm interested to see what Sam Laporta will look like at the
Yeah.
tight end position.
I'm excited to watch Sam Laporta.
Because
I
he has the ability to really round out this offensive side of the ball, or
A
he's going
tight
to leave a
end
hole
from
that's difficult.
Iowa
Yeah, exactly. It's
generally in the last few years has turned out
pretty decent.
pretty well. So
Yeah.
and he's looked really good in training camp thus far. But I want to talk about the defense for a minute. They were
Yeah.
surprisingly
They're
good,
they're in an
minus like
interesting spot though.
the name brand recognition because they don't have that outside of Aiden Hutchinson. Like, who is the big name guys on this defense? Probably CJ Gardner Johnson, and because Kirby Joseph did so well last year, him. But
If I'm not mistaken, isn't CJ Gardner Johnson out for a long time with an injury though? I thought I
yes,
remember seeing something.
yeah, um,
Which in my opinion significantly hurts them, because I was expecting all of a sudden you see, that secondary get significantly improved by a CJ Gardner Johnson who he stepped up and did particularly well last year, which is what earned him, the contract in free agency. But I just
I think you still got guys. I mean,
they still do, but their secondary is their weakness though. Their secondary is at least in my opinion, I
got a lot of
think,
veterans on that secondary. I will say that.
yeah. In
I,
my opinion,
I
I
think their
don't think they
safeties are
should have.
strong.
Yeah, their safeties are pretty strong. I don't think they really should have gotten rid of Jeff Okuda. I know that he struggled, but I really think that you try a little bit longer to see what you can get out of him and see if you can get the potential that you once saw in him. Because again, another guy that they shipped off for pennies, so it seemed, based on at least where he was originally
Yeah,
valued when he
hey,
was picked.
Atlanta, you want a 4th overall pick for next to nothing? Sure, take him.
I want to
And
say it was like a 4th round pick or 4th or 5th or something like that. And it's
and
surprising to me some
yeah,
of the guys they gave away for the return they got in terms of picks. But I mean, they made the additions that they wanted to try to take care of some of those positions. I think that they have the ability to shore up some of those mistakes. And I think that we could see some continued improvement from a lot of those young guys in that Detroit Lions offense. So that's what I really see being potentially the star point of this team this year. The big question is can they keep Jared Goff playing the more, consistent level of football, essentially what we saw with him with the Rams when they were able to get to the Super Bowl. You don't get to the Super Bowl with,
I don't see why not.
and I don't see why not either. But that's the thing. It's one of those things that you never know. But with the guys that he has around him, he has the ability. Just they need to just not try to out call Jared Goff's means, basically his talent. Don't
Hmm.
make him do a whole bunch of crazy stuff. Stick to your, pretty sensible You don't have to sling it all over the field at all times. Just let him do what he does well, and the Detroit Lions should succeed.
Well, this was one of the better offenses in the league last year, and by a lot of
And
stretches
keep
of the
Amon-Ra
imagination,
healthy.
it got better. Yeah, keep Amon-Ra healthy because that guy's for real. And very mad at myself that I didn't take a chance on him in fantasy football in his rookie year. But you know what? That's also the same guy who drafted Justin Jefferson late and then dropped him before he broke out. But you know, I've whiffed on rookie receivers before. Hopefully, I'll learn my lesson this year.
Rookies are difficult, man.
But overall, it's going to be a very exciting year for the Lions mainly because this division is so wide open and they have just as good a shot as anybody else. Yes, I mean anybody else. Anybody can win this division.
It's pretty open.
So will they be going to the playoffs for the first time since 2016? TBD.
I have them as yes. I think they will.
Yeah, I think they will too.
I have them finishing this season at 11-6. I think they really do have the ability to actually win 11 games, which is kind of crazy to say for the Detroit Lions. But given their schedule and, the improvements that they made last year, including all your additions, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I don't see why not either. I have them at 10-7 and going to the wild card game. Whether they win from there, who knows?
Welcome to the NFL playoffs. Nobody really knows, except for the Vikings. They'll lose.
Yes. Next up, we're going to talk about everybody's favorite team, this year's Super Bowl champion. You already know who they are, the Green Bay Packers.
It's going to be really funny once we talk about records.
The greatest franchise to ever exist in the history of the NFL.
Wrong.
Definitely don't look that up. Well, I'm sorry. 13 championships don't win themselves, Tim. Anyway.
And how many of them happened before they actually had freaking bars on their helmets?
A decent amount. Less than half, I know that much. Anyway, last year was not the year that the Packers expected. They essentially kicked themselves out of the playoffs. They had a chance at the win and in scenario at home against Detroit.
The Detroit Lions.
And then
decided to step up.
And then our Hall of Fame quarterback threw an interception as his last pass as a Packer. And guess what? We traded him. Aaron Rodgers is gone.
He gone.
Goodbye. See you next time. He is in.
Go sit in the dark corner.
Yeah, he went to the dark corner and he thought about what he did, and we still traded him anyway. You know what? It's been a fun half decade, but look, guy is turning 40. You really think that he's going to have much of a future as what we have right now? I would much rather take a chance with the guy who we spent significant draft capital on. That is,
I mean, they were going to have to turn the reins over at some point. Like you said, sitting for 3 years, his time was bound to come. You give him credit for, biding his time. Obviously, I'm sure that he learned quite a bit behind Aaron Rodgers.
And look, dude, you had agreed with me.
It's his time now.
You had agreed with me that it was Jordan Love's time. And guess what? Whether we like it or not, Jordan Love is the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. And with Aaron Rodgers gone, so are his shenanigans. Thank goodness.
Hopefully that wasn't one of the things that Jordan Love learned with his time under Aaron.
I would hope not. Well, you know what? If we have to wait another 14 years for that, fine. So be it. But what is there to say about this Packers team? On offense, it's a lot of question marks.
Yeah. That's the big thing. You've got so much that you really just don't know about. So it's kind of hard. They're a hard team to predict, really.
You have a large cluster of first and second year guys on offense outside of Jordan Love, AJ Dillon, Aaron Jones.
It's really just your backfield.
Yeah, and I mean, Love and Dillon are under 25. I mean, you have second years receivers, Christian Watson, Samari Toure, Romeo Dobbs. Then you have rookies, Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft. Like literally every skill player not named Aaron Jones is under 25 years old. So you can look at it. You can look at it positively or negatively, right? The downside is that it's going to be some growing pains. It's not going to be easy, especially early on in the season. But the bright side is they will have the time to learn and grow together as a unit. Like they're stuck in this. There's no like plugging pieces in and out.
No.
It's like this
That's the
is
thing with a young team. You just have to let them grow. This is not a team where you're gonna, input three different veterans in different position groups to,
I
try to
actually
make a
like
push
that.
for the playoffs type things.
I
But yeah,
mean,
you just got to be patient with it. And for Packers fans, like, I'll be honest, I think y'all can afford to be patient. Like, you guys
listen,
have had
I'm
a
trust me,
decent
I'm
amount of
okay with that,
success in
dude.
terms of making the playoffs and at least trying to push for championships, where
Yeah,
eventually you're bound
I
to happen
mean,
at least some type of rebuild. And I will say for the Packers, if this is their rebuild, this is a very muted rebuild from a lot of different teams when you lose a lot of key players. So
yeah, no,
realistically,
trust
they're
me.
still in a pretty decent spot.
Packers fans are spoiled rotten, and we very much
This
recognize
team has
that.
a lot of room to grow.
Listen, as far as regular season success goes, I'm fine. We've had enough of it. Like in a few years, if we're still bad, then I'll get a little impatient. Once we make it to the postseason, then that urge to win a Super Bowl starts creeping back in because
Yeah.
12 years of postseason failure, like 9 years of
Tends
that
to leave a
losing in the
bad taste in your
playoffs.
mouth.
Yeah, it gets us a little bit upset and angry and wanting that Lombardi trophy. Please, for the love of God, finish the job. But that's not going to be this year. Let's not get that twisted.
No.
I'm just gonna say right here, it's gonna be a growing year. They're gonna miss the playoffs.
Well, I'm
I
sure they'll
think
learn a lot though. That's what it comes
they
down
no
to.
they will learn a lot, and my expectations is that they'll be slightly below 500. Do I think if Jordan Love is really, really good, that it can click and they can somehow accidentally their way into a wild card spot? Yes. Am I counting on Jordan Love being himmy right away in year one? No.
You definitely can't count on it. It's a
That's
possibility, I guess.
that's gonna be
I don't think I
next year
see
where
it,
he's gonna
but
be himmy, and then he's gonna start like winning MVPs and stuff. But like it's not gonna happen right away. Look, all jokes aside, with Jordan Love, he has all the physical traits that you want in a quarterback. He's got the big arm. He can make all the throws, including the tough off platform Rodgers esque throws. He has the good decision making tools, at least in the preseason and camp. The ball has gone to the right spot every single. There's a reason his comp was Mahomes. He was a project quarterback that needed to sit and wait for a year or two. He got 3 years behind Aaron Rodgers. I don't think it's a stretch to say that in 2 or 3 years, Jordan Love is going to be really, really good. But we're talking about the 2023 season. I think the one saving grace there is that the offensive line is still pretty good. This is a sound offensive line unit with a lot of versatility. You have two all pros on the left side, and David Bakhtiari and Elgin Jenkins. Elgin
yeah.
Jenkins, who can play everywhere, by the way. Josh Myers, who is a pretty good young center when he's healthy. John Runyon has turned into a pretty good blocker. And Zach Tom, who's in his second year at right tackle, he can play left tackle or guard or center if you need him to. So I think that offensive line is going to hide a lot of problems. I mean, yeah, there's still going to be problems. There's still going to be growing pains, but the offensive line is going to help, but not hurt them. But I want to talk about this defense. Let's talk about this defense, unless you have something
Yeah.
to say about the offense.
The only thing I was going to say specifically about the offensive line is you mentioned, you mentioned a little bit in there. I think the one thing
They got
that
to
has
stay
a
healthy.
chance, I was going to say it has a chance of being their
Got to stay
downfall is
healthy, man.
can you keep those guys healthy? Because I know Bakhtiari is coming off of the big injury you talked about with Elgin Jenkins. You got to be able to keep a decent amount of these guys.
Fox like a year and a half removed. I think he's going to be fine. He'll be
Well,
okay.
and that's the thing. Just here, that's the problem though. Just because you're a year and a half off of a significant injury doesn't mean you can't have another significant injury
Well, nobody's
lurking around the
immune.
corners. Yeah, but I think in terms of if there is a reason for the offensive line's downfall, it will be not because of talent nor ability. It will
Yeah.
be that the injury bug. But they should be in a pretty good spot. Like you said,
Yeah.
there's guys across the board that are pretty darn solid at their position. I mean,
This
they're not all
roster
superstars by
has
any means, but you've
this
got a
roster
lot of
has
guys.
more talent than people give it credit for.
Yeah. I
People
mean, a lot of
forget
people are
that
just
Aaron
counting on the fact
Rodgers
that Aaron Rodgers
wasn't
leaves.
that
Like,
good.
they're
He
like, oh my
wasn't that good
gosh,
last year. He just wasn't.
no.
He tried to tough it out with
Wasn't
a
the lowest
broken
QBR
thumb.
of his career, I think, right?
It was like
30
35, which he registered. He didn't even register in the top 25 in QBR, which is very surprising.
Yikes.
He tried to rough it out through a broken thumb on his throwing hand and ribs, and just because he's Aaron Rodgers, nobody's Iron Man. Granted, he learned that from Favre, but Aaron Rodgers wasn't very good last year. He threw 12 interceptions, which tied for the highest in his career, and especially with a guy who like just passed the 100 interception threshold for his entire 18, 19-year career. I think
Yeah, and have more than a tenth of them come in just that one season. He's not
I
known for throwing interceptions.
I think that says something. So
Yeah.
Now this defense,
The defense should really be the star of the show.
this is going to be the most pressure-filled season for the defense yet.
They got to step
because
up.
You have talent everywhere at
You talk about
every
there's no more
single
excuses for
level.
the Bears. I don't think there's any excuses for this Packers defense
No, there's
anymore.
not. There's
Like,
even less excuses for the Packers defense, and I expect
you filled
I
pretty
expect
much
them to be
every
good,
position of need.
and I expect them to fill the holes. When the offense struggles, I expect the defense to step up and lock it down and keep us in games. Because I just want to talk about the first round pedigree that is everywhere. On that defense, 7 starters were first round draft picks. And then you
Yeah,
add
how many of
Lucas
those are
Van
Georgia
Ness.
Bulldogs?
Yeah. And then Lucas Van Ness, that's 8. And he's not projected to start. But you have Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary behind him. Both of them are pretty darn
it
good.
makes sense that both of those guys should start ahead of him. I mean, he's got, more work to do to get himself up to that level when you only have 2 guys that are playing on the edge there, and you've got 2 pretty darn solid edge rushers between Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith. So again, good guys to learn under as well. So we'll see what he looks like just during his time throughout the year. But just because he's not listed as one of the starters doesn't mean he's not going to have a significant role.
He's going to make an impact because all the physical tools are there. But I'm just going to list out the first round picks for you, right? Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Rashawn Gary, Quay Walker, Lucas Van Ness, Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, and Darnell Savage. Those are some pretty talented and significant names. So if you can't do it with this unit, then Joe Barry needs to be fired. Our defense coordinator needs to be freaking fired and shot into the sun. Because, like, if you have that much talent and you spend draft after draft after draft after draft on first round picks on defense, then
something's got to come from it. Like when you spend that many
where's the return on
picks on defense, you're getting to the point where like you should be creating a top 5 defense in the league, with how much focus you have put on your defense. So the question is will they step up and play like one?
I think it can. Is it right now? Yeah. No. I think this should be a top 10 unit in NF. Like
this
should be a top 10 defense. But
you look at just based on name recognition and or talent alone, because obviously name recognition is not everything in the NFL. There's a lot of guys that play very solid football that don't play flashy, don't get all the stats, but they get the job done. And if you just look at the guys that this Packers defense has, realistically, there's a lot of guys who have played well enough where they've earned your respect to know their
individually
name.
At least.
Yes. But once again, putting it all together, it's all about whether or not you can put the pieces together, and that's offense or defense, and it's just these teams as a whole. The question is can these guys also, I mean, again, and you could say this for any team, but stay healthy, because again, you have some of these guys that definitely need to stay healthy for this unit to really work together. But like you said, the pieces are there. The secondary is super solid. I think the front 7 still is really the star of the show there, with your guys that you make up that defensive line and the linebacking core. That some of those guys have really stepped up, even with the loss of some of the guys that they've had let go over the last couple of years and whatnot.
It's kind of fun, honestly, to not be favored anymore after so many years.
No, it takes some pressure off.
The overwhelming
you start having a little
favorites
chip on your shoulder.
Now, the Packers might be the most underrated team in football, and it's a good position to be in because now we're in a position to shock some people and start the cycle all over again, baby. This is a multi-year plan, all right? If you want to go back to the history books and see how the Packers did it the last time, 2008 weren't good. Not many wins. But the next year after that, playoffs. And the next year after that, Super Bowl.
Yeah, and the question is it's the big thing about a lot of these guys.
Man.
Well, yeah, it's staying the course, and with a lot of these first round talents, you have to see progression. It's one of those things that these guys have been around for a couple of years, and we're getting to the time with a lot of these guys where you need to see the step up. And I think you very well can, but it's just I think part of the underrating of this team is not quite seeing some of those steps up yet, or at least if you have, it's been flashes. It hasn't been consistency, and consistency is what makes you different from a good team.
It's inconsistency on defense and a big old question mark on offense, because you can't say that's what makes them so hard to predict. Because you don't know what you have.
Yeah.
I mean, we both have them at 7 and 10.
Yeah.
The possibilities are endless. But last and certainly not least, we have the purple Vikings. People from Satan, the Minnesota Vikings. Goodness gracious, could you have choked any harder last year?
Welcome to the Vikings.
Yeah, 13
I said what I said earlier, and I meant it.
Yeah, you have one of the best teams in the NFC, or so it seems. The record speaks for it, and then you go lay an egg against Daniel Jones and the Giants and give them a playoff victory. So
that's
coming
crazy.
Death, taxes, and the Minnesota Vikings sucking in January. All right, listen, there's going to be regression. That is absolutely. I can guarantee that. You can book that. The Minnesota Vikings will not go 13-4 next year because they're not going to go 11-0 in the regular season in one-score games.
Yeah,
it is almost statistically impossible, right? If you win 13 games and 11 of those are by one score and you lose,
you lucky.
0. Yeah, no, that's lucky. But as a whole, this offense should still be incredibly explosive, and they should even be slightly better because you take out Thielen and you spend a first-round pick on
you insert
Jordan
a pretty electric second option.
Yeah, and Kirk Cousins is an incredibly underrated quarterback. He played really well last year.
If you look at his stats, not even just last year, but
people are talking about trading Kirk Cousins and plugging in Trey Lance.
Oh
no, that was something.
Would you do that?
There were also some Vikings fans clamoring
for Kellen Mond.
Hey, Kellen Mond moments. We need some more of those. No, but Vikings fans, there were some that were calling for Will Levis to be drafted, which you don't realize what you have until it's gone, because I feel like they're going to appreciate Kirk a lot more when he's not their quarterback.
The biggest thing is, like, yes, I get the inconsistency in the playoffs really stinks. Like, I get it. But if you look at what he does to get there, like comparing him to the vast majority of the other quarterbacks in this league, especially the ones that are not your true superstars and whatnot, you've got it made compared to most teams. And
yes,
also the weapons around him are great. I don't expect much regression on that side of things, because you've still got essentially the best receiver in football in Justin Jefferson. You've got a young electric option with Jordan Addison. You're going to continue to build on the acquisition of TJ Hawkinson and his role in that offense.
Don't forget about KJ Osborne.
Exactly. And KJ Osborne has had some pretty significant flashes of being a very solid receiver. There you go. And I'm going to be honest, I think Alexander Mattison is an extremely underrated backup running back. When he was a starter for their team, I think he did pretty darn well.
Let's wait and see. Because it's very different being a change of pace back to being like the guy and like a bell cow.
But here's the thing. I'm not expecting him to, suddenly emerge as like prime Dalvin Cook level efficiency. But I guarantee you, I think that he will be a more efficient rusher than Dalvin Cook was last year. And you saw the success they had last year. So if that's the case, I think that he'll do better and that offense will be more balanced. And I think
But
that they will have a solid offense.
Tim, this defense kind of stinks.
So there's where they
And
run
that's going to
into
be their Achilles heel.
their Achilles heel is they have like Achilles ankles and like both of them. Like that's their problem. Is it's not just an Achilles heel, it's kind of glaring at times. And that really was their downfall not only in the playoffs, but the reason why they had so many like close games. It was because of the fact their offense would perform, but their defense is just
How many guys
suspicious.
left? How many guys left? Dalvin
Yeah.
Tomlinson is gone. Zadarius Smith is gone. Eric Kendricks is gone. Pat Peterson is gone. So
To be fair, Pat Pete is old. Now, granted, he
Pat
wasn't
Pete
bad.
did well.
He did well, but I'm gonna be honest, I would have expected some decent regression out of him this year, regardless.
Veteran leadership is underrated. I mean,
Well, it's
but then
invaluable.
again,
It's invaluable in the aspect of it's important to have your veteran leadership, but the problem is you need to have talent for those veteran leadership to build up. The
look,
problem is I don't really know if I think the Vikings have that kind of talent to build up.
If you look at this cornerback room for the Vikings, I think they'd really use Patrick Peterson because you signed Byron Murphy, you signed Joejuan Williams, you draft Mekhi Blackman, and then you have a Caleb Evans, which to put that all together, and what do you got? Yeah, exactly. No, they could use use a little bit of Patrick Peterson in that corner.
The big thing what it comes down to is just it was where they wanted to pay their guys. That's why they let some of those guys go. It's where your cap space is going. And I think that they decided that with how their defense was last year and the fact that it wasn't, very solid for a lot of it.
Who cares about the defense? Let that
new.
not distract you from the fact that Josh Oliver is the highest paid Vikings pass catcher.
That is so wrong on so many levels. A name that we didn't even mention in terms of the fact of their offense that is, pretty darn balanced.
3
has
years,
talent everywhere
$21 million, baby.
Yeah. You think about the names they've got, but here's the thing. Welcome to rookie contracts. So
yeah,
they really got to try to get everything they can out of those rosters before they have to pay.
Now you got to win now because Justin Jefferson's going to want his money. TJ Hawkinson
and he will get it.
Is gonna want his money. They're these guys
he
that
needs to get it too.
You're not paying much right now, and you're gonna need to. So whether the exodus on defense is clearing cap space for those guys, who knows? But I mean,
I still think they're going to be a very solid team, especially in the regular season. This is the Minnesota Vikings we're talking about. What I still see them having a very solid season. They'll do great in the regular season. They'll get, that middle. I have them as a 3 seed, and whoever they face, I have them facing. I won't say who I have them facing because that will be revealed in another NFC video, but I have them probably losing to them in the playoffs because welcome to the Vikings.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, when it comes down to it, when everybody's, starting to play their best football, defense is what sets you apart. And right now, their defense is setting them apart in arguably
all
the worst way possible.
Ways. Look, you have them at 12-5, winning the NFC North. They are not the favorites in this division by any means necessary.
Yeah.
They will be carried by this offense to a playoff berth. Maybe I do have them winning the NFC North, but that's just because of a technicality on a tiebreaker. I have them finishing 10-7 along with Detroit. This division is up for grabs. And Tim, you might call me crazy for this, but I see a universe where the Minnesota Vikings finish under 500.
Wow.
I see that as a possibility.
Really?
Not a foregone conclusion, but out of all the realms of possibilities, because there are always...
Look at their schedule, man. Really?
Well, they play a first place schedule.
Yeah, but I'm gonna be honest, out of their first place schedule, like there's a lot of games that I'm not gonna call them gimmies, but looking at them, like
there's no gimmies in the NFL. If there were gimmies in the NFL, then casinos in Vegas would be broke. That's just not the case.
I'm sorry. They're not losing to the Panthers. They're
They
not
might.
losing to the Falcons. They're
They
probably
might.
not even going to lose to the Broncos.
They might.
The Broncos is the only one that I could see being a one that I have them winning that could
I can
definitely
see
flip.
them losing to Atlanta.
No,
I
no,
I I mean,
no. Shut your trap. They're not losing to Atlanta. Come on.
listen, man.
You're gonna tell me Desmond Ritter and Bijan and
We'll
Kyle
cover the
Pitts?
Atlanta Falcons, but they are
We
one of the more
will, but
unique teams in the NFC.
you think they're going to outduel the I don't care how bad the Vikings defense are. Not even the Vikings defense is going to make that offense look good.
Look, man, there are these teams every single year that we expect to
Yeah,
be very, very good
no, I get
that
it.
fall flat on their face. I
Yeah,
think it's possible for the Minnesota Vikings to do that. I
it's
have them winning
possible.
the division. My official prediction is 10-7 in a division title. But if the Minnesota Vikings fall flat this season, don't be surprised. All right.
I
It's
can easily see.
possible.
I obviously picked 12-5. I can easily see 11-6. I could see them going as far down as 9-8. I do not see them having a losing record.
We'll just see how that goes.
Why play the game?
But that's all we got for our NFC North preview. We're going to be whipping around the league until week 1, covering
Glad to be
all
back.
32 teams in football. So if you want more from us, we have a ton of content on YouTube and all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. So
You'll find us.
let us know what else you want us to cover, because we cover a lot here and we're down to do it. This is fun.
Hey,
We're
we're right around the corner from a lot of sports seasons starting up, a lot of ones that we
Yes.
follow. So I'm really excited to get back into this and really start trying to hit some of this full steam ahead. So
Gonna be
we have a
fun.
lot of fun time ahead of us.
But until next time, we out.